Hey everybody out there, this is Seto Kaiba from your Yu-Gi-Oh! Chat channel. And today guys, this is actually a video I've been wanting to make for a long time actually. I just haven't had the time to make it and now I can talk about it. So today guys, we're going to talk about what were the top 5 game-changing sets in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now this is based off a whole bunch of different things guys. Personal preference, personal experience with the sets, how many some sets got higher on the list because they have a certain amount of banned and limited cards that came out of that set. There's just so many reasons why I base these sets off of. But the key thing you have to keep in mind is these sets changed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! They changed the way the game was played, and they introduced maybe a new element into the game per se. So that's what these sets did. Um, some some of these sets are very old, some of these sets are very new, but let's get started guys on this list. So down below after you see this video guys, please tell me what you believe are the top 5 sets in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's get started guys. I'll try and make this video not very long. Now this set has to be on the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! On this list because the fact it is the first set ever in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It came out in March of 2000 I think 2002, 2003. I can't remember. It's been ages, but the Legend of Blueeyes White set, came into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's just so many good staple cards that well, they are banned now, but back in the day, they were some of the best staple cards in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you guys want to go over those. So you had things like Regeki, Monster Reborn, Heavy Storm, Dark Hole, Pot of Greed, Harpy's Feather Duster, all these just staple cards that really made the game broken in the beginning, I guess you could say in a way, uh, came out in this set. But other good cards came out in this set that we really don't use that much anymore. Things like Swords, Maneater Bug, Fissure, Exodia came out in this set. Blueeyes White Dragon and Dark Magician were both introduced into this set. Now, the one bad thing about this set, for all those staple cards that we just mentioned, was there was a whole bunch of normal monsters we never ever used pretty much, besides Blueeyes and Dark Magician. It pretty much was a normal type set, vanillas. It was a whole bunch of vanillas that were very weak. But you have to remember, this is the first set ever in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And so it pretty much introduced the game into North America. The next set I'm going to list is, excuse me guys, is Generation Force. Now, it's just not for the fact that I know Generation Force as a set was not very impactful in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's the set that introduced XYZs into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it also introduced, I feel personally, a new concept into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That being, I guess you could say, toolboxing. And what do I mean by toolboxing? I mean, you're able to go into your extra deck and use that as a toolbox. Oh, you need to put a big monster face down. You go to Maestroke. I mean, Maestroke wasn't in the set. I mean, mostly the set, included Utopia, I think it was, and number 17 Leviathan, but and number 10 Illuminize Knight. But I know it didn't introduce a lot of game-changing XYZ monsters, but it introduced the fact of toolboxing. If you had a problem, you could go to your toolbox, and you could go to your extra deck, which is like a toolbox. Now, granted, toolboxing was around back when synchros were around. Yes, I understand, but when XYZs came out, that took it to a whole new level. You could, if you had 2 generic level 4s, 2 generic level 3s, just make the monster, and toolbox into things. It introduced the concept of toolboxing, and that's what XYZs brought to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Easy access cards that you can use to get out of certain situations, like a cowboy for game and stuff like that. Granted, those cards weren't in the set, but it introduced XYZs to the game, and it introduced that concept into the game of toolboxing at a different scale. Now, next up, now I know this set's only been like 3 sets back, but really, if we look back on it now, even though it's been like 5, 6, 7 months, I think it is, since Techion's came out, it's oh my gosh, it's almost in 3, 4 more months, it's going to be a year. But besides the fact, Techion's been out for over half a year now, okay? And I know dragons are dead as a deck, and not going to have a long-term impact, but let's just look at the short-term impact this set had. Let's also look on the long-term impact that this set could have on the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just for a short-term impact, it introduced one of the most busted, I personally feel, one of the most busted decks ever to come into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, granted, things like Teledad was the player base made busted, but Konami literally made this deck, you have to remember last format, they made this deck busted coming out of the gate when they introduced it here to the TCG. They literally put 7 stars into this, the deck. They put Dragosack. They put all the dragons in the set, and just in this one set. Oh, and on top of that, they put Judgment Day in the deck. So yeah, the deck was broken to begin with, and also it had a great little archetype that nobody really paid attention to, that being Battling Boxers, and another great archetype which is not so bad either, which was Mega Phantom Beast. But the thing is, nobody plays those decks because dragons were the deck to beat, and the last 2 formats have been wrecked by dragons. Look at this past format. What was the main deck people played? Dragons, dragons, dragons. And it's just one of those dominating decks that just really came at, Konami made to be dominating. Now, in the long-term impact, I think it's going to be the fact that this set was remembered for all the busted cards that came out of it, but also for the fact that they really, dragons ruined an archetype in Dragoonides. Dragoonide ducks were not the problem. Dragon rulers made Dragoonides busted. And also, dragons are going to be a thing we're going to have to deal with for the rest, for next format and the formats going forward. And the fact that they are splashable cards, all the big dragons are splashable in each and every element. So, Redox and Gadgets, Blaster and Battling Boxers and Fire Kings and all that stuff. Tempest and Water, Tidal in Water, and Tempest and Harpies and stuff like that. So, they're going to be around still. They're still going to be splashable, but this, for the short-term impact, I have to admit this was one of those sets that, it really put the hammer down for short-term impact. It was really impactful onto the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And long-term, I don't know how this set's going to be, but it's going to be a set that I'm going to remember for the future as being an amazing broken set. Now, next up, we're going to talk about the Duelist Genesis. Now, this set introduced synchros into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, unlike when GX came about, and unlike when XYZs first came out, they really weren't that powerful. So when GX came out with Cyber Dragons and all that stuff, they were impactful, but they weren't super impactful. When XYZs first came out, like I said earlier, in Genesis Force, they weren't super impactful on the game. But when Duelist Genesis came out, mark my words, that set was impactful. Synchros right from the starting gate were impactful in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And also, if you guys want to know a little tidbit about this set, this is actually the first set that introduced a concept into pack openings in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You could pull a holo, so you could pull a super or ulti or ghost rare, and you also got a rare card with that pack too. So you got extra cards, if you pulled an ulti, super, or rare, stuff like that. You know what I mean. You didn't just get a rare, and you didn't just get an ulti. Before this set, you would either pull an ulti or a rare, but after this set, and this set too, it introduced that you could get an ulti and a rare, or a super and a rare, etc., etc. But just synchros, when they came out of the starting gate, had an impact on the game, and it also introduced one of the best synchros long-term, I guess you could say, in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is Stardust Dragon, Stardust Dragon, since this set, moving forward, was impactful in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, hands down. And the number 1 set. Now, regardless what you feel like about the sets that I said, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5, number 1, hands down, has to be Invasion of Chaos. Now, this set is over 10 years old, and this set, to this day, before the ban list in January, has had an impact on our game. Let's talk about all the busted cards that come out of this set, just off the top of my head. D-Mach, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Black Luster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. Let's see what other cards we got coming out of the set. You also had Return from a Different Dimension, Oh, also, self-destruct button, that card that just got banned, that came out of this set. So, yeah, people, this set was just super broken coming out. And there's some other cards, too, that really I haven't even talked about yet that really came out of this set that people kind of forget. We have, they had the big staple broken cards, like D-Mock and Emperor, but there's some other cards that people forget about. Things like Different Dimensional Fusion. Now, just for these broken cards, not alone is this set number one because of that reason, but there's some other cool cards that came in this set that people kind of forget, like Mana Core of Darkness, Berserk Gorilla, Mazza the Zapper, and Stealthbird were also in this set. But it also introduced a new concept into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! This set introduced that concept, and that concept was banishing, or I guess you could say banishing, or the different dimension get part of the field. So before this set came out, banishing cards was not really a thing. If your card got banished, there was no way you could get it back. But this deck set also introduced DD things like DD Warrior, DD Scout, DD Scout Plane, Return from a Different Dimension, and introduced a different concept into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That really wasn't there before. It was there, but nobody really used it. If your monster got banished, it got banished. But this set introduced, you could play with a deck that could banish monsters and they could come back. And it also introduced that you could banish things to, get higher level monsters like BLS and stuff like that. But it introduced that little concept of banishing into the game more. Also, it broke special summoning. This set is the set that made special summoning no longer special. People could argue that before this set came out, special summoning was special. When this set came out, that was null and void. Special summoning was no longer special after the set because you could just special summon by banishing a light and dark, things like BLS, D-Mock, and, Chaos Emperor Dragon just for banishing a light and a dark. So, those are my top 5 busted sets, well, I guess you could say, in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! The top 5 game-changing sets in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Please, down below, guys, tell me what you think of this. Do you think I missed a set? I probably missed a set, and I apologize for that. But please tell me down below, guys, what do you feel were the top 5 most game-changing sets in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Until next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I'll see you guys next time. Seto Kaiba, I'm out of here, guys.